So hello and welcome to our Parent Support Night on the theme of talking with your children about tragic events. I'd like to welcome our presenters tonight, Father Bryan Duggan. He was born and raised in Burnaby, BC, and ordained to the priesthood in 2011 for the Archdiocese of Vancouver. After 5 years of ministry as a priest, he began studying for a doctorate in clinical psychology from Divine Mercy University, which is located near Washington, D.C. Now, in addition to his ministry as a priest, he's a licensed clinical psychologist and works in various roles providing psychological services for the Archdiocese, as well as teaching at the Seminary of Christ the King and St. Mark's College. And I'm also very pleased to welcome Trixie Cruz. Trixie Cruz identifies herself as a proud Filipina Canadian whose family immigrated to Canada in 1975. She's a registered clinical counselor and has worked at Vancouver College as a resource teacher and now as a school counselor for the past 15 years. She also works in private practice at Jericho Counseling Services here in the Lower Mainland. And she recently completed a trauma-based modality of therapy known as EMDR. Trixie is a single mother of 3 young men who are now pursuing their basketball dreams in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, everybody, welcome. I know this is a small little group, but actually that probably lends to, a good conversation and starting the conversation about how do we talk to our children about trauma and tragedy, and particularly from the lens of our cultural perspective, and in this case, being Filipina, right? Of course, I'll go through the slides. I'm not going to read everything from the slides verbatim. The slide deck will probably be available at some point. But what we're doing is we are examining what it means to use the strengths of our cultural heritage and our perspective, and also recognize that there are some barriers in that as well, right? In terms of like how we do talk to our children and recognizing what kind of support we need, the uniqueness of being Filipina in light of what's happened with the Lapu-Lapu tragedy, that has really come to the forefront in terms of how we are all managing and dealing with it. The Filipina community is very small when you think about it. As many Filipinos as there are in the world, it becomes quite small all of a sudden, especially when something like this happens. So I can imagine everybody was touched to some degree because of the tragedy, right? Indirectly and directly. So understanding trauma through the cultural lens of being Filipino, well, I mean, our cultural background, it defines who we are, right? It's the significant part of our experiences. Filipinos, our culture, we offer lots of things that are great. There's a resiliency about us. There's the support, there's the spirituality, there's the faith component to it, but also there's characteristics that can become barriers for us, particularly in understanding the nuances of how we parent and how we provide that support towards our children, right? And really kind of taking a closer look at what those barriers might be. And again, I'm generalizing, of course, like everybody's individual experience sitting here in the room is going to have like a different take and uniqueness, but I can imagine that you could relate to it to some degree. I spent some time speaking with my mother a bit on the phone and asked her about what her advice would be in terms of, talking about tragedy and trauma, and talking to, from being, now she's like, my mom's she's 76, my dad's 80, how they were raised and how that influences how she feels about when you speak about things that are difficult, right? So there's a few things. My Tagalog isn't great, but there are some words that you will understand, that hiyain, the shame sometimes that comes along with talking about traumatic events. We don't really want to do it, so we avoid it. So Filipinos love to kind of, let's pivot. I'm embarrassed about something. I'm shameful about something. Again, this is not just specifically about Lapu-Lapu. This is about tragedy and trauma in general, right? So there's a component of shame that sometimes happens. Something bad happens to us. We don't want to discuss it. We feel embarrassed about it, and we'd rather just suppress it and not necessarily talk about our emotions. There's a reluctance there, okay? The debt of gratitude that we sometimes feel. right? That there's the survivor's kind of like guilt. I'm indebted to somebody. I feel that I don't want to endure that suffering because I owe loyalty to somebody else. And therefore, to talk about my suffering or to talk about the trauma might make it feel like I don't appreciate. So sometimes I'd rather just not talk about it. So we don't acknowledge sometimes our abuse, and that will also hinder your ability to heal. So there's an incident that occurs, but now I feel like, well, that person might be involved in some way or another, and I don't want to discuss that. Pakikasama, my friends, I want to avoid like excluding myself from the group. I want to be able to be a part of the harmony of my group. I don't want to rock the boat. Maybe there's an incident that has happened. Maybe people are being affected in some way, and I don't want to be the source to present that kind of thing that's coming up. I want that harmony to be maintained. So it's like I'm going to take one for the team almost, right? I'm going to be the one that suffers because I don't want the greater group to suffer or the greater group to feel bad. So that is also very Filipino style of managing the way that something happens to us, right? Additionally, the other cultural factors, which Father will touch on it, is that like that religious fatalism, which is like, God will take care of it. Right. And so if I passively acknowledge that God's going to deal with it, then I don't have to deal with it. And that is like that divine spirituality that we have. But at the same time, that reduces your motivation to actually go and seek out the support and the help that you might need. Of course, prayer is important, and prayer makes us feel connected and helps the healing process. But it can't be the only thing that we do, when we take action, particularly, again, when we're talking to our children. Strong family ties. So the importance of placing the reputation and the loyalty of your family is there. So I'm discouraged to speak about something because I don't want to speak against my family. I don't want to, again, it's bringing that shame component into it. I don't want to share traumatic things that have happened. I don't want those experiences to potentially isolate me from the rest of the group, right? And then there's also a stigma around mental health. And we'll talk a lot about the masculinity of that stigma, where, if you need help, maybe it means that I'm weak. Or in trauma, it's like you want to dismiss it because I can internalize it and I can deal with it. And then therefore I don't have to show that there's a vulnerability that is required. And then gender role expectations. We can't not forget that, Filipinos have still a very male-dominated, strong sense of like men are the strong ones and the women are the ones that are the modest ones. We're the ones that are behind the scenes and often taking care of it and doing that in like a quiet manner, right? We're not trying to like go out there and cause problems or make things worse. So that emotional expression can be limited, right? Because we're reinforcing the silence that needs to, that the trauma kind of pushes us into, and then there's no healthy emotional way of processing it. So how do we talk to our children about traumatic events, knowing that we are also Filipinos that have all these cultural stigmas attached to it and our upbringing and our background, again, with a beautiful component to it, knowing that family is important and the parts of our culture that is very faithful, but we do need to be able to really strongly have the tools to speak to our children, particularly, I would say, in this day and age, raising children in this time that we're in, right? So key communication strategies, again, use appropriate language and concepts. Depending on the age of your children, we really want to be able to understand like there is a component of age appropriateness, right? Create a safe place. Make sure that they know that they're not going to be judged for what they are going to express to you. Normalize emotions, right? We want to be able to normalize that it's okay to feel sad, mad, frustrated. Maybe I don't want to, I don't want to engage right now. So that's okay. And then again, using our culturally normalized metaphors for storytelling. So every family, every culture does have a component of that cultural piece that they can share with their children on how their family members have dealt with things in the past and how those positive stories can help their children also continue to talk about trauma and heal in that sense. And then again, there's a balance of honesty with a reassurance about safety. I think the biggest thing for young people specifically is knowing that they're safe, right? I think after Lapu Lapu, it was like this really strong fear that something else was going to happen. And that again, like that demonstrated it could happen at any time to anybody, right? And so the fear for young kids is like, how do I know I'm going to be safe? Right? Because it was a festival. It was people who were just out having a good time. There was no,
You're supposed to be safe.
yeah, you're supposed to be safe in those places. So there's a reassurance of that. There can be safety with you. There's going to be safety in most contexts of situations. And that, yes, acknowledging though that bad things sometimes happen and we don't have control of those bad things, right? Again, respecting that indirect communication style, whether kids are showing whether they need to be with you. Sometimes they are sad and you don't know why, and you're just picking up on cues, right? Acknowledging that spiritual framework that, yes, you can pray, we can pray together, we can pray with each other, using language that honors the values of your family and the values of being Filipino. And then again, reinforcing the cultural perspectives that we have as Filipinos to your children and the importance of that when we're working through something that's really hard. Okay. Signs that kids are struggling. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to just be talking and talking the whole time. We're going to have an opportunity to like have, you guys participate in this. Okay. So signs your children might be struggling. So again, sleep disturbances. If we're breaking for the summer, but I know that there was some kids, particularly at my school, that were having difficulty just coming to school a little bit and getting their assignments done. So small little nuances that like have been affected because of the trauma that they've experienced. Emotional shifts. Now my kid is angry, they're edgy, they're sad a lot, they're isolating themselves. So those are not typical of just being a teenager or being a young little kid. And then any kind of physical complaints. So often younger children will have somatic issues. They'll say, my tummy hurts, I have a headache, I feel like dizzy, or I feel tingly. And that's their bodies, learning how to process stuff that they don't have the ability to articulate with words, or don't know how to process the emotional part. I'm going to pass this slide because it's about the faith in supporting your children. I want to say that I did ask Father Bryan to touch a little bit on how in the faith component of supporting your children, particularly for Filipinos, we often will defer to, prayer, and then guilt our children because they're not going to church and they're not praying enough, or they're not, participating in the way that you think their faith needs to be demonstrated. It's okay for your kids to say, I don't believe in God anymore. Why would God let something like this happen? So it's not about challenging them to say, don't say that. It's not about saying like, you can't say things like that. Of course God exists. You can just let them run through the process of that and and just hear them, right? Yes, I'm sure there's many ways that you can circumvent that. It's okay to be mad at God. It's okay to feel that he is not there to be supportive. Why would he let something like this happen? And acknowledging all of those feelings that they may have, because it is a hard thing to process when something that large happens. And again, we're also talking about we're talking about other tragedies or other traumas that your children might be experiencing over the course of their life, right? So it can be related to school, it could be related to friendships, it could be related to family members, all of those kinds of things where they might be pushing faith aside because of what's happening to them. And then moving forward, again, understanding that you can build resilience together with your children. We have to learn how to adapt and change to the way that now our kids are living, learning, and what they're exposed to, right? And so acknowledging that there's cultural strengths that we have, with with our own families, and building up on that, but also recognizing that you have to create a space for them to express those things. They are seeing things in social media. They are talking to their friends about things that you may not have wanted them to know, and then they are being exposed to that. You want to create a supportive environment that when those things happen, they can come to you and talk to you about it, because they're not going to be judged, they're not going to be criticized, and they're not going to be told to like stop talking about that. We don't want you to talk about that, right? Because that's sometimes the model that ends up happening is like, hey, we don't talk about those kinds of things, right? And then that kind of like shuts the whole barrier down between like what it is, what's going on, and what they're trying to process, and what it is that they really need support from you too. And again, we're not experts as parents on every single thing, right? And we'll need guidance around that. Modeling good coping mechanisms, good coping behaviors as parents, right? It could be really difficult when we don't have the tools ourselves to help our children. So oftentimes it's recognizing what your capabilities are too, and what is the, where's the capacity that you have to continue to assist in this, and then where do you need to reach out and get some support, whether it's through the church, whether it's through your friendships, whether it's through the school, other people who are in your lives. Maybe it's an auntie, maybe it's an uncle, maybe it's a cousin that has some better tools than you might have. A trusted adult, in my mind, for any child to have that is not their parent, is another great way to allow your children to feel safe and to be able to express themselves. So it doesn't have to be you, you know? And then again, where to reach out for help. We do have I have a list at the end of the slides, and then we also have some resources here. The Filipino org's website has been really good at posting really good links for families because of Lapu-Lapu especially. Your school should have good resources. So and if they don't have good resources, they will help get you good resources. I know that everybody was kind of scrambling around and supporting one another to find good resources for Filipino families, especially during this time. And of course, your church, right? Going to church and finding the resources within your own church community, and then professional services. So now people start to reach out beyond that, and they look for counseling. So I mentioned, like it was mentioned, I work at a clinic called Jericho Counseling Services, and they're private. Of course, you might need extended benefits for private therapy, but oftentimes that is a really good option, particularly for long-term counseling care, depending on the trauma or the tragedy that your child has experienced. So that's like a very quick, fast, like run through the slides of what's happening. But I'm hoping that through what I've kind of shared with you, we can now start opening up a bit of a dialogue in terms of just like, what have you been experiencing? What questions you might have in your own families, and really kind of breaking down a little bit more of the challenges that it is to be Filipino and work through tragedy and trauma, not only just to talk about it with our kids, but like to deal with it ourselves, right? Because generationally, we have not been given those tools or been given permission to be as open about that. So I think that's an important part to acknowledge as well. And
there's cultural components and then generational components.
100%.
Faith. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
that was excellent. Yeah, thank you so
yeah,
much.
that's like that in a nutshell. Again, there's going to be, I have resources up there that we'll be able to share too, but I'm going to throw it over to Father Bryan.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, maybe a good time to just take a pause,
Yeah.
check in, and if there's anything kind of coming up for you in what's been shared so far. I'd be curious even to hear what sort of brought you here today. If there's, I want to make sure that we are meeting your expectations or giving what would be helpful for you. If anybody wants to share, please feel free.
I came here because I was there at the Lapu-Lapu.
There.
I was exactly at that moment.
You witnessed it.
I witnessed my daughter
Mhm.
12, and we're lucky enough, I guess, through faith as well. We were almost at the end of the truck when things were happening in our back, like behind us. We just hear screams and everything. And then the car stopped just right beside us. We could have been the last victim that
Wow. Came right beside.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Wow.
we both ran. So we went
Wow.
through like a few sessions.
Yeah.
My daughter
You and your daughter. Okay.
we were able to cope with it for a few weeks. There were sleepless nights.
Mhm.
There was some after effects,
Mhm.
the fear of seeing a black car, even though we're just
Right.
walking. But
Mhm.
then, so as the counselor said, just try to go back to normal.
Mhm.
And then I got the link from the school saying if you want to attend this session.
Mhm.
So that's why I came.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for
And
sharing.
also, I like the counselor's correct. Like you want to continue some normalcy after you've been able to kind of talk a little bit about it, but also acknowledging that there's a trigger that's going to happen
Yeah.
at some point down the road, and being able to spot that trigger and use coping mechanisms through learning through that, counseling sessions, that, how to settle myself down, how to talk myself into recognizing that I'm okay. Because something of that nature, being witness to that, it's a trauma that is going to take time to process. Right? It's going to take time, and I might cry one day out of the blue for no reason, and your daughter is going to be in the car, or she hears something, and it's okay to say that's okay. We're still working through it. Yeah.
They say just count 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 and just snap out of it and see if it's the same situation or not. And if you see that it's not the same as before, you just kind of wake up yourself and say, oh, it's not that moment anymore.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, those kinds of grounding exercises can be helpful, whether it's counting or breathing. I find like touch is really helpful for me, like being able to kind of rub a texture or something where it helps bring me kind of present to, okay,
Yeah.
I'm here right now in this room, in this kind of scratchy, uncomfortable chair, is kind of a grounding. So those kinds of things can be really helpful. And what you mentioned about seeing a black car is very significant, I think, where those kinds of like triggers, where it's something that is similar and reminds us of a previous traumatic event, even just to be able to say that makes sense. Of course,
Yeah.
that's triggering. And sometimes we can have this reaction of like, oh, but I should be able to just see a black car and be fine, and we kind of get frustrated even. But to be able to say, like, of course, that's terrifying, brings you back.
Kind of toned down a bit now.
Yeah.
She went to school and she's graduating, and they say try not to talk about it as much, so we don't talk about it at home anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was advice that you were given. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does vary depending on the child, right? Sometimes it is easier to not go through it again. I'm reliving every detail. I'm talking about it to the point where I'm re-experiencing my trauma. But it's okay to acknowledge I do have feelings that are coming up, and I know it's related to this, right? And it's okay to acknowledge that instead of saying like, it's okay, stop that. We've already moved past it. It's a very Filipino thing to be like, enough, nah. Yeah, right. To be like, we can keep going, but it's okay to stop and acknowledge that. But yeah, to the point of the therapist, it's like we don't need to relive every detail. It's not helpful to relive every single detail and bring that up in our minds. Yeah, like a movie.
About it more, just going back again to that.
Yeah. It's once you are able to like process that disturbance itself is where you can potentially go back and talk about a tragedy that you were involved in. But it takes time to be able to process that and let it, take its course through your own emotions. Yeah.
And that you are going through your own journey. And I think that's something we really need to have space for is our own processing. and what we would talk about with a friend as we are talking through what we're going through would be different than we talk about with a child, especially, you know, at 12 years old. And so I think that's very wise what you're describing, you know, that you keep that difference, but that you have space. It's so important that you have space where you can talk and you can share what's going on for you. And it's always that such a balance, you know, where you know, as you've seen, Trixie, there can be such a, okay, that's in the past, let's not talk about it. And then maybe, I think we've all had experiences where a parent or a loved one, you know, they know that we're troubled about something and they're trying to help. And so they keep asking us about it. It's like, leave me alone, Mom. You know, I'm like, so we. Oh, she's asking you. Okay.
Oh, can you still sleep or
Yeah.
it's like
Okay.
then she checks in on me.
That's really significant, you know, where uh, for a child, part of the traumatic experience is witnessing its impact upon others, especially parents. So for a child, it can be almost more traumatic to see a parent scared. Not that it's bad to be scared. Of course, a parent is scared, but that has an impact as well as the event itself. And so your daughter kind of wanting to take care of you is likely connected, you know, with her own processing.
Yeah.
And so that it's such a tricky thing to sort of have that balance where our children know that we can talk about this. It's okay to talk about it, and I'm here for you. But I'm not pushing it. I'm like, well, we should talk about it. And I'm also not saying, oh, no, let's move on. That was in the past. It's kind of having that middle space where there's a permission given. We can talk about it. I'm here for you, but also respecting their own journey.
And also understanding that you have a process too, that you are scared, you were worried. There was a lot of things that you are also trying to make sense of that doesn't make sense to you too, right? And them knowing that, oh, my mom suddenly, she doesn't have any problem dealing with this, and there must be something wrong if I am still dealing with this, right? So there's an acknowledgement too of just like, yes, this has affected me and I'm working through it too, and we're going to work through it together, that kind of thing, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Was there anything else that was coming up for anyone that would be important to touch on at this point?
Or any questions specifically to your experience with your children or your own?
Heard. And we have opened the Q&A online, is that right, Clay? So the people watching online are welcome to submit questions as well. I might just put my slides up here.
Yeah, I can pass the HTML to you.
That's the cable.
Or do you want to, does it fold down? Or do we want to switch?
Pretty sure I could pull that TV down if it's right. Why don't we switch?
Yeah, you might want to switch. Thank you. We don't want that coming down.
It's a big TV and it looks heavy. Sure. And for those that came in late, we do have coffee and cookies available, so help yourself if you're wanting. Okay. So I'm just going to follow up on what Trixie so wonderfully prepared for us. I have kind of a little bit on the mental health side, and then a little bit on specifically kind of a faith perspective, and then happy again to have some space for questions. I have a couple scenarios as well that we can play around with. Is the audio okay, Clay, coming through? Yeah. Okay. I have like an allergy to lapel microphones. I never seem to get them to work correctly. So we use the word trauma a lot, and I just wanted to kind of pause and reflect on what that word means. what comes to mind when you hear the word trauma? Anybody want to be brave? I think for many of us, we think of like something really significant, such as the Lapu-Lapu tragedy. Often we think also of like soldiers returning from war. The PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is really originates from the experience of veterans witnessing horrific events. And that is true. That is what trauma, especially that's where it originated as a psychological term. But sometimes the downside of that is we make it too big. And it becomes sort of only the most extreme things are considered traumatic. And we can get into almost like a comparison thing of like, well, my trauma wasn't as big as what somebody else witnessed or what they experienced. And so we can kind of even downplay our experience. And I find this really helpful. Does anybody know who Gabor Mate is? You've heard the name before? He's a remarkable Vancouver doctor. Worked on the downtown east side for a long time. He's done a lot of work in the space of mental health, and he's on a bit of a faith journey. I think he's exploring spirituality again at this stage in his life. But he's spoken about trauma a great deal, and he says trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you, connected with what happens outside. But it's particularly about what happens inside. And he goes on to say, children are not traumatized because they get hurt. They're traumatized because they are alone in the hurt. And that's really the key. I think if there's one thing to take away particularly from my reflection for tonight, is the gift of being present. That our children need us above all to be present, emotionally and physically present to them. That is the greatest healing influence in anyone's life, children or adults. I need that in my life. We all need that. And so that being present and listening well is a great gift. So trauma is often also described as a feeling of being overwhelmed, where this thing has happened, or I've experienced this thing that is sort of bigger than my capacity to respond to. And for children, often it's difficult for them to put that in words. And so as Trixie mentioned, it's often exhibited through behavior. We notice changes in behavior. And in particular, silence is really something to be aware of because of that isolation piece. That trauma is what happens in isolation, in aloneness. And if we're silent and withdrawing, that's where there can be a bit of a risk. So some things just to be aware of. Trixie mentioned these already. A communal response is a particular gift, I think, in this context, where this feeling of being alone can be really, we can help push against that with the strength of community. And I've been to many Filipino picnics in the park with halo halo and is it mix? Is that the mix? Yeah. There's a great gift of being together, and that's a great strength of the Catholic community, particularly Filipino community. Many of us have been blessed by. It's also important to that we don't insist that somebody be part of the group in a particular way. So sometimes, especially recovering from trauma, there can be a sense of like, no, come, you should like be joyful, or like come and celebrate, or like, have fun, and we can almost kind of be pushing. And that's where, and it's just a subtle change, but an invitation rather than pressure can be such a gift. So like, hey, we're going out, we're gonna, gather as a community. It'd be lovely to have you. And, oh, I don't really feel up to it. It's like, well, you don't have to be any sort of way that you don't feel like. We'd be delighted to have you there. But if you don't feel up to it, that's okay too. So giving that kind of permission is really so important, where it's an invitation and not pressure. So this is that key that I mentioned, just the being present. listening with full attention, not trying to explain what happened or give, give reasons. We'll get into the spiritual side of it in a moment, but that's often a temptation we have of why did this happen? Or why are these things the way they are? And we feel a pressure like we need to answer that. Maybe it's even a challenge to our faith of like, well, okay, if I'm a good Christian, I should have an answer to that. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give is just to say, that's really hard. It's a devastating thing. And I don't know. I don't know why God would allow that. I don't know. And to just simply say that can be a great gift, because we don't have to solve. We just have to be with. So sometimes we try to be helpful. We say things like, oh, it's all part of God's plan. But how can God's plan involve this awful tragedy? And that's not what we mean when we say God has a plan, but it can be how it's interpreted. And so, just to be conscious of that. Or for those who have died. Sometimes we'll say this, at funerals and things, they're in a better place now. And, it's like we're trying to, of course, I don't mean to make anybody uncomfortable. Well, we have all said these things at different times. But sometimes for someone who's missing a loved one, it's like, well, I don't care that they're in a better place now. It's like I'm missing them right now. And so just to be able to honor that, it's like, oh, you're really missing your loved one, or like, this is really sad. We don't have to solve it. We don't have to answer it. We just acknowledge what they're feeling. Holding space for all of those emotions, including anger and anger towards God. It's very common, especially in the face of unexplainable tragedy. There is not an explanation for what happened at the Lapu Lapu Festival. And we won't know this side of heaven. And to try and offer something other than that, short circuits the process that we have to go through. And that does include some anger. God, why? Why would you allow this? Anybody, this is not a scripture quiz, but does anybody think of somebody in scripture who is angry at God? Moses, yes. Yeah, exactly. There's a whole book dedicated to the one guy, Job. Like there's many examples of saints and in scripture of expressing anger to God. And so, of course, it should be part of our journey as well, and to allow that for our children. Trixie mentioned the guilt, where we can even unintentionally bring some guilt into like, well, you should go and pray, or you shouldn't talk about God that way, or you should, it would be better to do these things. That it's a subtle message, but and it's obviously there's a good intention in there. But sometimes it has that unintended effect of, well, if that's what God wants, I don't want any of that, rather than an idea of a God who, oh, I want to hear how you're doing. I want to hear the anger. I can handle that. The God who wrestled with Jacob, right? The Jacob actually wrestled with an angel. He can handle that. We'll come back to the scenarios there in a moment. So that presence, that validating of feelings, like it's such a simple skill. I do this a lot with our seminarians where we practice how to listen, and I really enjoy it because we're all terrible at it and we need to be reminded. But listening is just simply reflecting back. Somebody says, I'm really scared. And our temptation is to solve it. Oh, don't be scared. And a gift we can give is to simply say, you're really scared right now. We're just reflecting back to them what they're feeling. We don't have to solve it. And by doing that, it's not just simply saying words, we're showing that we're present. I'm with you because I'm the one saying, I've heard you. I see what you're saying, and I'm reflecting it back to you. And it makes sense that you feel that way. Another really helpful thing to say.
And sometimes it's easier to just say, what do you need from me, instead of imposing what you think they need.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because oftentimes, and they might say, I don't know, or I just need a hug, or whatever that might be. It's like, what do you need from me? I know you're scared. What do you need from me? Or I know you're angry. What do you need from me? And
Yeah.
just to be here, right?
Yeah.
Lots of times the kids, they just want you just to be there.
Mm.
They don't need an answer.
And it's also communicating to the child that you trust their strengths,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know for me, something I've found very moving is, and sometimes it catches me by surprise, is when somebody says, thank you for sharing that with me. Like, thank you for trusting me with your fear or with your anger. It's very honoring to acknowledge that. That can be a really powerful thing as well. So some spiritual principles I thought would be helpful, is that faith is a relationship. It's not about answers. And so, if I'm expressing anger about God, that's a relationship, because for those of you who are married, sometimes the anger, which is directed at a person, that's a relationship, right? And so there's a relationship there, and so that's actually a good thing. And so trying to move too quickly past that over spiritualization is a term that's sometimes used for that kind of thing. So allowing that anger, allowing confusion, questions are really important and don't need to have quick answers. Why does God allow evil? We have been trying to answer that question for 2,000 years. And there's lots of reflections on it, lots of ways to think about it, lots of really deep thoughts about that. And we're still asking the question. And it's in asking the question that that relationship develops. And that's something that happens individually as well as a people of God. The book of Job, God responded to Job in his anger. We have this beautiful book of his response to him. And God is the one who is present. He is presence. And so he's with us in our ups and downs, or questioning, or wrestling. We don't have to be a certain way for God. He's with us as we are. Meaning making is a term that's sometimes used in the healing process, where as we are processing through the things that have happened, we discover meaning in those events and those experiences. That cannot be rushed. Sometimes we want to give the answer, but that's a journey, and it has to be walked individually. So allowing that space and that time is really powerful, and that's where prayer and personal reflection are so important. I'm going to pause there. How's that sitting with all of you? Is there anything that's stirring from what I've shared? I have a couple of scenarios we could bounce around in the time that remains as well, if you like. Yeah. Trixie, are you anything that I've missed that you think?
No, that's great. I think the addition of that is really about understanding, what Father said at the beginning. A trauma is not necessarily this big life-altering event that has happened. It can be even anything that changes something inside myself that challenges who I am. Right. And so for young children, when they're at school and they come home and they say, so-and-so said this to me, and we try to minimize that, we need to understand that a teacher might have said something, a peer might have said something, they might have experienced something else somewhere, and they're trying to communicate that it has affected them in a way that is kind of like questioning or changing who they are, and it's affecting, what they're thinking of themselves. That in itself could be something that just needs the time and attention to be able to sit with them and acknowledge, right? The acknowledgement of that, and like how I can help them process through something that they might not be clear about understanding and how it's really affecting them. So the big ones for sure, and then all the small little things that, we sometimes pass over or try to minimize for our children because we have the experience of like, that's not really that big of a deal, but it's a super big deal for them. right? Because it's the first experience that they've had with that interaction or that kind of exchange, and then they don't have the tools to really manage their emotions in those situations. And oftentimes it can come within our own family, right? And so the dynamic of that relationship that the struggling teenager has with his father or his mother, or the dynamic between the siblings that are going on, and we're not paying attention to that, or the idea that it doesn't matter because we're family, but it does matter specifically because we're family, right? So those small acknowledgements as well, as our kids are working through their own issues and feelings.
You'd mentioned earlier, Trixie, that I don't think you used the word machismo, but like that kind of masculine.
Yeah, that masculinity that the Filipino men love to.
Yeah. I think as you were speaking, it reminded me, like I often hear, especially from like older generation priests, not to throw that under the bus, but this idea that like the younger generation is being coddled, that we're like too soft. And what Trixie, you're mentioning just now is like, that's actually what builds resilience. When we push down and say, oh, that shouldn't bother you, just like move on, that can like work for a time. It creates like a facade, like an exterior strength, but often it's brittle, it's fragile, and it can break later on in life. And what Trixie is mentioning of like paying attention to those little small t traumas and equipping our children to go through the whole emotional experience of what's happened, that's what builds resilience. That's actually strength and courage. And that leads to long-term
Absolutely.
flourishing.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit counterintuitive sometimes, especially for a different generation.
For sure.
But
For sure. And culturally too, right? Like, you don't talk back to your parents. You don't talk to me like that. You don't say those things. I because I said so is said a lot, right? In families, not just Filipino families, but that hierarchy of like, no, it's because I said so, and that's the way that it is, and you're going to do it no matter what, and all the things, because that's the parenting style that the generation has been used to and accustomed to. And it's not about being soft. It's not about like, who's in charge. It's about the relationship that we want to have with our children. And if we want to create a safe environment and a safe space for them, that they are going to come to us in tragedy and in trauma and in things that go terribly wrong for them, right? They have to have that understanding and that feeling that I can. Right? And that it is a safe place to come to. And oftentimes in my private practice or even at school as a counselor, the biggest thing that kids will talk about is that they have a difficult time telling their parents that. If they were to tell their parents that, no way are they going to be able to understand or to, see their perspective or to support them. Right? And it's about helping them to learn the strategies to be able to do that too, right? So sometimes it's like being handcuffed at school to be like, I just want your parents to come in too and have these conversations and open conversations. But yeah, creating a space for that in your homes for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's take the second scenario here. So over dinner, your daughter announces that she does not believe in God. She looks ready for an argument. She's spoken before about how could a good God allow suffering? And maybe let's spice it up. You've got some family visiting. Maybe your parents are visiting, and now they've just witnessed your daughter say this. How do you respond? What comes to mind for you? Putting you on the spot a little bit.
I think step one is I have to be calm first.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, be calm. Take a breath. Yeah. That's huge. Absolutely. Yeah.
I got some food in the kitchen, right?
That's right. I think I need to get dessert ready. And I mean, that is an option, right? It's like, okay, we're not going to talk about that. We'll just move on, right? I mean, and maybe that's, in that setting, that can be the right thing, depending. Um, what else? Yeah.
I don't know. I have to be honest here.
Yeah.
When the tragedy happens, I'm like, the next day, I'm thinking, why are people? It's my like I ask
Why are
God,
people?
I pray.
Mhm. Yeah.
We are peace loving community.
Yeah.
We only love to like food, we want to eat, we want to enjoy. We were there like to support our community and to enjoy, our background. And I invited friends, like even my family, like, hey, there's a great artist, and and we were there like the whole time. We were there like and my husband like from noon to 8:15.
Yeah, she invited me. I wasn't getting go.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Stop coming.
Wow.
I said, okay, I'll bring along my
Yeah,
daughter.
The one from the Black Eyed Peas.
Yes.
Oh. Oh.
We will have fun, blah, blah, blah. And you know what's funny is like one of the songs that they sung, like, it's like, where's the love? It's
Mhm.
quite ironic.
Mhm.
And so I pray, like, God, why? Is there sort of a message you wanna tell us?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, where's the love? What has happened? Where did we go wrong? Like, why? Like, why
Mm-mm.
the people? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't wish to do any other, technique,
No,
but it's just like, why?
but of course,
Mm.
yeah.
Like, and so, yeah, like even
Mhm.
myself, I'm like, my
Yeah.
God, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and that night that yeah, my niece phoned my daughter, and because we were I think luckily we split ways. They went this side and we went here for parking. We were just like, you have to walk 3 blocks away, and then my daughter like got a call from my niece, and she's like hysterical, like, an accident happened here, and and so we thought they had a car accident. And then so we're just like listening, and then but I can see my daughter's like face, like, her wide-eyed, and then all of a sudden my husband's phone is ringing,
Mm.
and then a friend of him like sent a video, like a raw video of that thing.
Oh my gosh.
And I was
Mm.
telling my daughter, okay, just call the police, and then my daughter wants to go back. Let's help people.
Mm.
Yeah, like let's go to
Mhm.
and Amy, and let's help them. And I said, okay, yeah, let's go. But like we were like there was already fire trucks coming in and all that, and my husband said, I don't think we can go. We will be trapped there.
Mm.
If like then my daughter said, no, we should park and then we'll just walk and let's help out. But during that night, like, we were like looking at this video, and I'm just like frozen. Like I just all I can hear is oh my God, from our a good friend of ours who works in the ER,
Mm.
and she's just frozen. She can't.
Mm.
And she's like, was like, oh my God, like what's this? Like, I can hear like crying,
Mm.
and the bodies were there, and so even myself, like I got like the first raw video
Mhm.
of it, and
Mm.
so when we got home, the three of us, my husband's like, talking to his friends, showing this video, and then my daughter's phoning her friends who were there too, and yeah,
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, I'm like in shock.
Yeah.
And then when I look at my phone, my friends are telling us, are you guys okay? I know you guys really love going to this cultural events, and you guys good. And I was the one like, okay, as a representative of our family, okay, we're good, we're good.
Mm.
And then I just told my family, we have to pray for everyone,
Yeah.
for everyone.
Mhm.
We don't know what has happened, and what's going on, but let us pray for all the victims, for everyone, for all of us. And then the next day, I'm like texting my friends and who were there, and it's like, I'm here for you. Is there anything I can do for you? How can I help you?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then so yeah, like I don't ask. I just waited for them to tell me what they experienced, and then
Mhm.
little by little,
Yeah.
they did. And then I, from work, I got all this sites, for support. And so I send them that, and without telling me like, you do this, I don't try to, and then I said, yeah, if there's anything else that I can do for you, let me know.
Yeah.
But I'm praying for you.
Mhm.
Let's pray for one another.
And then making sure you take care of you,
Yes.
right?
And sometimes you do that.
Because the
And sometimes-
busyness helps to deflect that
Yes.
I also have so much pain and so much things that I'm managing. But if I help and if I do all these things, then I don't have to face that either.
True.
So giving yourself space and time. Yeah. Yeah. So the acknowledgement of like, no, this happened to me too. And I need to take care of myself too.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
When we arrived that night at home, I couldn't even drive, I was shaking up. And then you hear the ambulance coming. We haven't even eaten because we want to go to the food truck. We were running. We just run. All I could do was, where did I park? Just keep on running. But my daughter looked and see the bodies. I saw the body. And then as soon as we got home, I said to Amy, let's go pray. Let's go pray. Because those people that we saw lying down, they're probably not going to make it. So that's what we did. We just prayed for about 15 minutes together.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then I said, if you want to talk to your friends, go ahead. But, praying help us to cope that.
For
way.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
it seems that they went back and like they went, and then they're
Yeah.
all good. And then the next thing you know, they have to go back to their parking, and they're seeing
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
different scenario, especially for my niece. She's like,
Yeah.
she can see on their side, and I was asking, are you okay? Like, yeah, Aunt, I saw everything. And
Yeah.
then the next day we went out for lunch, and we were about to cross, and I can feel like she's shaking. She
Yeah.
can't even cross
Yeah. Yeah.
the street, and I said, just hold on to me. We'll cross together.
That's good, such a beautiful example of the being present.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we can cross together. Yeah, not pushing, not forcing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much in what you've shared. Thank you.
That night, Mom, I said there are things that we cannot really have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we just pray. Just pray for them. Pray
Mm-hmm.
for the person who did it.
Mm-hmm.
Pray for the people who survived.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can never have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what's going on with that person.
That's
who
right.
was there. We don't know what situation is in. I said to her, let's just learn how to forgive and pray for him too.
That's very powerful. It's very powerful. And it takes time. Yeah. I think, we as Christians have the ideal, of Christ, to love our enemies and to forgive even those who hurt us. And that's such a powerful and beautiful ideal. And all of us, it's wrestling to it doesn't, I often, a lot of people who've been hurt will say, oh, I just can't seem to forgive this person. I want to, but then I feel angry. And we have this false idea that if there are feelings of anger, that means that we're not trying to forgive or we're not loving. It's like, of course, there's anger. That doesn't mean that we're not striving, to imitate Christ, but also not to rush that. Like sometimes we just need to be angry, and those times need to happen as well. To hold space for that.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for what you've shared. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
And a process, right?
Mhm.
It's still a very present tragedy that will take lots of time to for yourselves and for your children to move through and to be able to in their own ways, and for you to be able to make sense of for yourselves so that you can move forward. And so it's not holding you back in ways, that prevent you from continuing to live a life that you want to live. Because that's the thing about tragedy and trauma that we want to identify with our children and in ourselves, is that the thing that has changed us or the thing that has affected us isn't still holding us back from being the people and being present to the things that we want in our lives. That's not anchoring us down, but it's actually like allowing us to learn and move forward.
It doesn't disappear,
Mm-mm.
but it doesn't imprison. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes time, and with teens especially, the process is not linear and it's not quick. I worked in my internship when I was finishing my degree. I worked with clients of all ages, and there was one client, a teenager, that it was really difficult to go to talk about the things that were really weighing on them. And what we ended up doing was just playing cards. We played cards for like 6 months, and occasionally, something would come up, and sometimes not. And it was just about like that consistency and keeping that space, and it comes.
And to that point is, it's never too late. Like we talk about fractured relationships and families. Oh, but my husband and my son don't have that relationship now, or me and my daughter don't have that relationship. It's never too late. And you just start from creating a new kind of relationship with one another and building that through time, right? So, yeah, we all make mistakes and we all have our own failures. But if we can adapt and change and be open to that, and acknowledge that I have messed up, or I have difficulty expressing my emotions, or I'm really trying here to be open to you, and how the world is today, right? And so that acknowledgement can also help to bridge new relationships within your own families that are difficult, right? With our own parents, with our children, within our siblings, to be open to what that step looks like too.
Just want to check in, Clay, if there's anything online. Make sure we give space. Okay. Very good. Very good.
So, Father, what are the scenarios?
Oh, what's the right answer?
Right.
There's only one right answer. These were just meant as prompts, just as, kind of,
Like this
we've been through, you've witnessed these.
And how do you feel like it like, how do you, like, you will respond in a way that and then there's a way that, yes.
Like exactly 7-year-old, my grandson. So I don't want to go to church, it's super boring. So I just go ask the father. Father right there.
To the priest, or to the priest? Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Send to the priest. Appeal to a higher authority.
It's hard.
Yeah, the not going to church is not hard, but it's also like for a young child, you can ask them, okay, so what do you not like about church? Right? So acknowledging, okay, what don't you like about going to church? It's so boring. I don't know what he's talking about. Blah, blah, like it's too long. And so finding like this, okay, what do you like then? What do you like about church? So I was that kid that was like, so boring. But I went to 11 o'clock mass because 11 o'clock mass had singing in it. And the guy at the front would play the guitar and he was really good. And I remember it was like more engaging, right? And so for me, I was like, if we go to 11 o'clock mass, then I'll go to the 11 o'clock mass. Or I would go at the 1 o'clock mass because I can't remember his name, but the father would always cut it short. He would like, I know it's sunny and you guys want to be outside. Let's let's get this done. So, there's small things that you could, hear them out on. And so that it's not this like, you must go, or, you will be striked upon.
That's so true, right? Sometimes we lean on authority and we're like, oh, well, you just have to. That's what we have to do. And and sometimes you need to, like, just that's the reality as parents.
Tradition, I think.
Yeah. But sometimes finding that middle space where you can take, offer the presence, the relationship of asking. And then you still have, well, one of the rules in our house is that we go to Mass on Sunday. And so I hear you and I appreciate, thank you for sharing that with me. And you're 7 years old and that's a rule in our house, like
For sure.
so there's a way you can still have the rules, but also have a relation, like lean into the relationship. Yeah.
And I would say for teenagers, because teenagers are a harder audience,
Yeah.
is to say you do get to make your own choices when you, about who you are, who you want to be, what your faith is going to be. And this is something that in our family, like, this is what we believe. This is what we want to expose you to and give you as much opportunity to have that relationship with God, right?
Yes.
And so it's not about saying that it's like, okay, wait till I get out of here, right? Because then you're still allowing them to know that their relationship with God and in the church is their relationship. It's not forced upon the fact that my mother or my father made me go to Mass. It's like, what kind of relationship do they have with God and do they want to have with God? That is, I think, the permission that you need to give teenagers. Because a lot of the times, when I'm talking to students at school, I'm always surprised by the ones that are so faith driven as 17 and 18-year-olds because they've been given the opportunity to make that choice for themselves. And they will say, I know I need to go to church more. Even though they don't, they will say, I know I do. And I know that that's where my relationship is going to be better. And that's my commitment, so they'll say those things, right? So it's not finite. It's not like if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. It's in any relationship, like Father says, it's their own relationship with God. It's not your relationship with God, to say, here's my kid. It's helping them nurture that relationship with God. And how are you allowing that relationship to take place?
And I think sometimes as parents, it's such a good point where we can feel a kind of
Guilt.
we feel the guilt too, right? We pass it on, we feel it. Where it's like, well, if my kid's not going to Mass, I'm failing as a parent.
Yes.
And that creates like another layer of pressure and guilt and to be able to kind of step back from that and say, okay, what is God asking of me? This child has been entrusted to me by God. What is my job? That this child knows that I love them, that I'm in relationship with them. And that endures whether they're going to Mass or not. And so that's, for us to be able to say, okay, I may not be able to get my teen to go to Mass with me every Sunday, but I'm working really hard for them to know that I love them and that they can talk to me about anything. That we're doing what God is asking of us at that point.
Yeah. For sure.
I think we can probably wrap it up here. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate so much your presence and what you've shared. And Jane, did you have any concluding remarks? Yeah.
So thank you so much, Father Bryan and Trixie, for the wonderful presentations, but also for the opportunity to interact and really, and we are recording this, so it's something maybe we'll be able to share in the wider community. So very much appreciated for sort of lasting a gift to not just the Filipino community, but for all us parents out there who at various times really struggle to know how to help our children and how to help our children in a way that is really informed by our faith and by our belief and by the things that are so important to us. So thank you both. Just wanted to let you know there are some pamphlets over on the table. I invite you to pick those up. As well, there is, if you were present at Lapu Lapu, and there is resources available for counseling, and what's the right word? How there is finances there to help you with that counseling. So if you have are wanting that, please reach out to the Mental Health Ministry at the Archdiocese of Vancouver, and we will help to connect you up with those available resources. So there was a wonderful outpouring of generosity from the wider community, and so we would love to support families in any way that we can. So that's another thing too. Moving forward, for as long as it takes, please continue to reach out and to let us know how we at the Mental Health Ministry can help you in your journey.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.